No monster is more terrifying or dangerous than a person. Today we're exploring the idea by highlighting one of Grimhollow's most infamous institutions, the Arcanist Inquisition. When featured in your campaign, the Inquisition are likely to be a villainous faction, but part of what makes them formidable is that they believe themselves to be heroic. They are a dangerous nemesis for the spellcasters in your party and create political intrigue while exploring the darkness of humanity. My name is Byrne, and this is how to make the Arcanist Inquisition formidable in your D&D campaign. Within Grimhollow, the Arcanist Inquisition are a religious order who persecute any soul tainted with the impurity of magic. Their patron is the Arch-Seraph Imperius, divinity of strength, courage, and righteous warfare. In Imperius's name, the Inquisition destroy all that is considered dangerous or unholy. The Arcanist Inquisition hunts monsters, defiling necromancers, and warlocks who transact with demons. Yet their fundamentalist understanding of Imperius's will incites them to also persecute alchemist healers, druidic wanderers, or child sorcerers. To quote from the Monster Grimoire, Inquisitors claim that if they set an innocent afire, Imperius will douse the flames. That he has never done so is proof that no one has been wrongfully condemned. The Arcanist Inquisition is easy to port into any fantasy setting. You can draw inspiration from similar institutions in other worlds, such as the Children of the Light in the Wheel of Time or the Templars featured in Dragon Age. The thing about the Inquisition is because they believe themselves heroic, their representation in your campaign doesn't need to be stereotypically villainous. They shouldn't be role-played as frothing, screaming cultists. They don't enjoy inflicting pain or punishment. It is simply a righteous tool which they use to combat evil. Consider the Reverend Hale from Arthur Miller's The Crucible. He is the church's expert on witchcraft and questions the townsfolk of Salem with calm authority, genuinely believing that he is keeping innocent folk safe. The Templars in Dragon Age or the Children of the Light in the Wheel of Time are all bedecked in silver armor with red or white cloaks. I imagine the Arcanist Inquisition to be clad similarly, bringing light and safety to a world that they see as corrupted. And what makes these institutions so formidable is that, in some way, they kind of have a point about magic. As we discussed in one of the first videos Dante and I made for the channel, magic in a dark fantasy world should be difficult to wield, and therefore generally mistrusted by commoners. Even if wielded with good intentions, magic has the capacity for violence and horror that no mundane weapon is capable of. I've had player characters shatter street corners just to kill a few thugs, destroying homes and possibly killing civilians. Mages can manipulate minds to take away free will. They can force undead souls into their service, and they can conjure demons and aberrations that they very often can barely control. The Arcanist Inquisition believes themselves to be heroic, and often they do maintain peace and order by destroying dangerous spellcasters. This tension between good and evil that they enact upon the world, this complicated morality, creates the perfect atmosphere for your dark fantasy campaign. The Arcanist Inquisition are a terrible and violent institution, but often so is the enemy that they hunt. And many settlements and regions in your campaign world may actually feel safer when the Inquisition is around. A few times in their series discussing the God of War games, the YouTube channel Fat Brett makes the distinction between a character's actual presence in a story and their narrative presence. Actual presence is how often a character is on screen, making choices and taking actions that drive the narrative forward. Your party in your D&D campaign has a massive amount of actual presence because the story revolves around them and they are present probably 100% of the time. Narrative presence is how much a character or an institution can affect the story without even being physically present in a scene. How much does your party think about or make choices based on other characters in your campaign who have significant narrative presence? The Arcanist Inquisition can have a huge narrative presence in your campaign world. The party may be forced to contend with their influence even when there isn't an Inquisitor around. Faith and fanaticism are powerful weapons that can spread through an entire population, so that every commoner and every NPC is a potential spy for the Inquisition. Is it worth the risk of casting even a simple spell in public, knowing the word could reach the Inquisition and bring wrath down upon the party? Or other NPCs that the party are associated with could similarly suffer at the Inquisition's hands. The presence of the Inquisition can affect your world more generally as well. Even NPCs that have no love of the faith may still fear or despise spellcasters because of the horrific stories that have spread about magic thanks to the Inquisition's influence. Nothing I've ever done in a dark fantasy campaign has made magic feel as rare and dangerous as when I featured a powerful group like the Inquisition that actively hunt mages. Other spellcasters might seek your party's aid in escaping the Inquisition. Entire settlements could erupt into conflict and accusations of witchcraft because of a single Inquisitor. Buying magic items may only be possible via a black market that your party has to discover first and gain the trust of, that they're not going to rat them out to the Inquisition themselves. The point is that the bigger narrative presence you give the Arcanist Inquisition in your campaign world, the more important and formidable they will seem. In their persecution of mages, the Arcanist Inquisition employs many tools and weapons, the most powerful among them being faith and fear. Faith is more powerful than any army because the Inquisition can gather followers wherever they travel. Local lords may be open to small cadres of Inquisitors operating in their lands to root out dangerous warlocks and apostates. It saves the lord the effort of mobilizing their own militia or paying for mercenaries. But such a concession to the Arcanist Inquisition can quickly become fraught because faith and fervor can spread through a fearful population like wildfire. The Inquisition don't need an army when they can raise one wherever they travel, with or without the blessing of local rulers, because there is no higher authority than divine dogma. A grassroots militia raised by the Arcanist Inquisition are collectively called the Faithful. They may be commoners armed with only pitchforks and daggers, or actual soldiers swayed by the eternal dogma. They root out spellcasters among themselves, neighbor accusing neighbor. They spread stories of the arrogance and danger of mages and the eldritch nightmares that warlocks conjure up whether they intend to or not. The faithful confiscate property and suspected magical objects. They form hunting parties that bring the accused before an Inquisitor judge, or they create spy networks that locate apostates for the Inquisition to then detain personally. Before long, folk are either afraid of magic or afraid of the faithful, and the narrative presence of the Inquisition can be felt in every corner of your campaign world to a greater or lesser degree. Indeed, fear is the Arcanist Inquisition's second best weapon. They use fear of magic to galvanize the faithful into action, but they also use the fear of burning at the stake to terrorize their arcane enemies. The techniques used by the Inquisition are torturous and ruthless. This is where a content warning may need to appear in your campaign, perhaps during a session 0. And I absolutely do not suggest that you actually torture your player characters with the inquisitorial techniques I'm about to describe. Stories or scenes of such duress applied to other spellcasters, NPC spellcasters, can elevate how formidable and terrifying the Arcanist Inquisition truly are. You could have burnings at the stake stake in front of a cheering crowd, or public confessions where the mob are encouraged to throw mud and rotten fruit at the repentant. The Inquisition's most terrifying form of execution is the penitent mage, which is a metal statue of a person kneeling in prayer. However, the statue is hollow and a victim can be forced inside into an uncomfortable kneeling position. A fire is then lit beneath the penitent mage, heating the metal and burning the victim until they are boiled to death. The Dragonborn of Embercan are often witnessed using the penitent mage, using their breath weapon to inflame, freeze, or electrify the metal of the statue in spectacular fashion. Of course, the Arcanist Inquisition must stop mages frequently escaping through a misty step, a gaseous form, or a mental suggestion for release. To do this, they use black runes, a type of runic magic that is inscribed upon shackles and chains and stops spellcasters from being able to cast spells or cantrips. Creating black rune shackles functions similarly to casting the arcane lock spell. They are opened with a password that only an Inquisitor would know, and they do not require the use of keys or padlocks. However, they cannot be pried off with the knock spell and are treated as a 4th level spell effect for the sake of dispel magic. This is assuming that someone has come to the mage's rescue, as those shackled are utterly incapable of casting spells or cantrips themselves. When conflict arises with the Arcanist Inquisition, there is a plethora of stat blocks that you can use depending on the level of your party. Similar to our bandits video from 2 weeks ago, virtually any martial stat block can work for both actual Inquisitors and the faithful that follow them. The faithful could be mobs of bandits, thugs, or veterans. Perhaps it is a mix of these stat blocks led by a zealot berserker or an insidious spy. Actual Inquisitors are likely to be better trained, and therefore knights, assassins, or champions make great stat blocks. You could give any of them the Mage Slayer feat to give them an edge against your party spellcasters. You could also give them simple magic items that may aid in witch hunting, such as a ring of spell turning or a ring of mind shielding. Maybe their helm gives them advantage against being charmed or suggested, or their shield or armor gives them resistance to elemental or arcane damage types such as necrotic and force damage. The Arcanist Inquisition are also led by crusading paladins and noble clerics. The Blackguard and War Priest stat blocks in Monsters of the Multiverse are both perfect for ready-made Inquisitors. Of course, Grim Hollow, the Monster Grimoire, contains a collection of actual Arcanist Inquisitors, each with a different role within the institution. The Hunter sniffs out arcane corruption. The Priest protects their fellow faithful and hears confessions. And the Inquisitor Judge decides the fate of heretics. The Monster Grimoire also includes a collection of lesser and greater Celestials, who may act within every level of the Inquisition if they believe in Imperius's cause. An Empyrean Knight may lead a branch of the Inquisition or escort a particularly dangerous mage prisoner. An Eye of Zabriel may act as a familiar to an Inquisitor priest, helping to discern heretical lies inside a commoner's pleas for mercy. Or the big bad villain of your campaign could be a Solar from the Monster Manual or an Angel of Imperius from the Monster Grimoire. If you want to introduce a taste of the dark fantasy to your D&D campaign through the Arcanist Inquisition, I hope you found this video useful. And if you have, we'd really appreciate if you liked the video and consider subscribing, because we have a lot more videos that will help introduce dark fantasy into your tabletop RPG campaign. Such as this video up here, where we show you how to make bandits and raiders formidable in your D&D campaign. Or this video here about character transformations that your players can experience and show the Inquisition why they should be afraid.